Like, I just feel like there's so much untapped potential in the kind of universe of content creators. So many male creators have these diehard loyal female fan bases, like you're saying, like on book talk or romance talk or whatever. And there's no real way for them to monetize them, right? And so Quinn's idea is, what if you could tell these diehard fans spicy stories and monetize them that way? And we think that it definitely has the potential to be on the scale of something like OnlyFans, which is just a juggernaut in term and has totally just like flipped the erotic content space on its head.
That is Caroline Spiegel, founder of the audio erotica platform Quinn. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Create Tomorrow podcast. I'm your host, Cassandra Napoli, head of marketing and events insight at WGSN. Every 2 weeks, I am taking you on a journey to examine how brands and consumers are creating tomorrow, whether that's through product innovations, actions and strategies, or online behaviors. In this episode, we'll hear from Caroline Spiegel, the founder of Quinn, an audio erotica app at the intersection of the creator economy and celebrity culture, which is paving the path for a new kind of spicy platform that centers women. From crowdsourcing erotic writers in various corners of the internet to the potential for brand integration into the platform, Caroline delves into the future of audio erotica. Caroline, welcome to the Create Tomorrow podcast. Can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and share a bit about your career journey so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Caroline. I'm the CEO and founder of Quinn, and Quinn is an app for audio erotica. In 2019, I was studying computer science at Stanford. I was studying computer systems, so nothing to do with what I do now. It was a lot of compilers and operating systems and networking. And I actually, at that time, was dealing with an eating disorder. And through that recovery process, had struggled with loss of libido and female sexual dysfunction and got really interested in the sexual wellness space and in kind of erotic content and erotic digital content and discovered audio erotica. So that kind of was the light bulb moment around Quinn.
Yeah, you can start with telling our audience what exactly is Quinn.
Yeah, so Quinn is a subscription app. It's $4.99 a month for unlimited access to thousands of short erotic audios. So they're typically like 15 to 30 minutes long. And we have kind of this library of voice actors or narrators who tell very spicy stories. And they're very immersive. So it's like the voice actor is talking directly to the listener.
Caroline, can we hear a bit from one of the stories?
Like it could happen, like right here. I mean, it's not like I'd pin you up against this bookshelf right here, right now, and start kissing your neck or anything like that. No, that would be too much with all these people around.
Okay, that sounds like what I would expect. So how often do you actually publish these stories, Caroline?
Yeah, so we publish, I would say, around 50 audios a week. Right now, we kind of operate as like a curated marketplace. So we don't produce any of the content in-house with the exception of Quinn Originals, which are like celebrity kind of marquee audios. But the vast majority of our content is creator made, and creators are what we call like Quinn narrators. So they're all publishing around like once a week, maybe once every other week. And we kind of concentrate all the drops onto Tuesday or Friday. So we do big drops on Tuesdays and Fridays. And now I want to say we have probably 6 or 7,000 audios now on the app.
What is some of the most popular stories that you have on the platform? And what are some topics rather that tend to really agree with your audience?
So our top two categories pretty regularly are this like MDOM category, which is male speaker dominant role or energy. So again, like that kind of Christian Grey. And then the other side of the spectrum, that's also one of our most popular categories, pretty much always, is boyfriend, and that's like boyfriend experience, very loving and sweet and designed to kind of be like sound like a relationship. Our top audios right now, let's think. We actually just had a creator launch who did like a therapist themed audio as his first one. There are some tropes that just always work, enemies to lovers, so, like, your coworkers that hate each other, professor student, classic, these kind of tried and true tropes.
So, as I mentioned, our audience listening in is mostly brands, right? So, I'm curious what you think that they should know, right? Your demographic is largely young women, and this is like a clear place for them to reach potential customers. Is there anything that they should know about the audio erotica space, and is there ways to integrate into Quinn and other platforms like it?
Yeah, I guess the thing that mostly comes to mind is the kind of tie-ins with thematic, like, content tie-ins. I think there are so many movies and TV shows now in the mainstream that really touch on erotic themes, like Baby Girl is an example, but I can think of, like, Sinners right now. Hundreds of movies really have this erotic element at the heart of them, and so playing off of those themes or, like, working with Quinn to promote that type of content has been hugely successful for us just because of how normalized this content is now.
Wow. And what gap in the market did you notice that sort of led you to found Quinn? Why audio erotica? Why that format?
A lot of erotic content right now, it's overly graphic, it's a little off-putting maybe to a female audience, it's very much in the male gaze. A lot of it feels kind of subtly or not so subtly misogynistic or rough or too rough rather, and maybe there are some questions around the ethics and consensual nature of the content. A lot of it is free, a lot of it is designed for, like, clicks, but I think the main thing was, for me, it wasn't a good user experience. Like, when I was on these kind of tube sites or looking at other types of erotic content, there's a lot of, like, just off-putting content. I didn't like the UX. It felt very unerotic to me, honestly. And I definitely was inspired by, like, fan fiction communities, erotica communities, and a lot of this kind of, like, erotica style content has been very popular on the internet for a very long time, like story content. But I think a lot of it is kind of maybe too long form. Like, I don't think the modern consumer has, like, 6 hours a day, 500 pages a day of get to read fan fiction or romance novels. So what really stood out to me about erotic audios, which I discovered on Reddit and Tumblr, were that they were short, kind of snack size. They fit kind of that, um, they fit into a user's daily routine. Instead of listening to the calm mat meditation, you listen to Quinn maybe in the morning and it kind of sets you up for your day. So it just kind of felt more in line with, I guess, like the modern media diet.
So, Quinn is very much a platform designed for female pleasure, as you were saying. Is it an intergenerational space or does it cater to mostly younger, hyper digital or digital native audiences? Can you talk a little bit about the demographics?
Our largest kind of age bucket is 24 to 30. Our core user base is Gen Z and millennial users, and I think that's for a few reasons. Like, I actually think this type of content really resonates with older women, and we would love to have more older users or older female users, but I think it's, like, for one thing, we're just, like, a very digital forward company, obviously. Like, I think a lot of people wouldn't even think to, like, download an app for this type of content if they're not used to that whole kind of world. And then, we do a lot of our marketing through organic social media, so that obviously kind of skews younger. Oh, another thing of it is a lot of our creators are on the younger side because they're, like, kind of multi-hyphenate digital content creators, a lot of our voice actors. So we would love to have older voice actors on Quinn as well, and it's kind of hard to find older content creators who are down to try audio erotica. So it's actually a really big focus for us is expanding our offerings for older women.
And what's different about your spicy platform that's designed by and created for or with women in mind than perhaps some of the other options available on the internet? Think OnlyFans or, some of the others.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference, like, just it's kind of case by case. Like, so for OnlyFans, for example, they are very focused on visual content. The whole app is kind of optimized for visual content and chats with images, chats with videos. And I think the vast majority of OnlyFans customers are men. And so we're kind of trying to flip that. Like, what does it look like to build what women want with women as the consumer? And we don't think it looks like videos and this kind of, like, traditional visual content.
Yeah, at WGSN, we've talked a lot from like a perspective about the rise of sexlessness or what's been dubbed a sex recession. Some stats here between 2010 and 2020, the number of young men not having sex doubled. And for young women, that number soared 50%, while celibacy amongst the 22 to 34-year-old age also spiked. This is a global phenomenon, it's happening all over the world. Do you or I guess where do you think audio erotica falls into this? And is there more of a demand for audio erotica if people are having less sex?
I think there are some people who feel that audio erotica improves their IRL relationships and sex lives, but, I think there's also this case that it maybe encourages parasocial kind of behavior and that maybe it's like oh, you're just listening to Quinn audios or like you're chatting with these character AI bots or you're reading fan fiction instead of going out into the world and having relationships. So, I definitely think Quinn needs to be a place that you go and after you listen to Quinn, you wanna go basically have an intimate experience with your partner, or you wanted to share Quinn with them or, you know, a pro-social place, and I do think that's the case for most of our users, that they use Quinn as inspiration, and they use it as a way to kind of, like, tap into this part of themselves, which then kind of bleeds out into their other IRL relationships. I think also maybe historically men have had this kind of separate individual solo erotic space in their lives and that's been very normalized. Like, oh, for men, it's normal to maybe watch visual erotic content, pornography, even while in a relationship, but women don't, or women don't have that kind of individual erotic space. And I think it's really important for everyone to have their own kind of sexual practice outside of their relationship or that's just for them.
We talked a little bit about this already, but I want to go back to this idea of visual versus audio. So typically when we think about porn, it tends to be visual, right? I think that's the majority of the options out there. It's almost integrated into all of our platforms these days. I mean, you can turn on Instagram and there it is. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of inescapable. That said, can you define the audio category? Why is it and why does it work today over maybe some of the visual offerings out there?
It communicates things that are not communicated in the current landscape of visual pornography. On fan fiction websites, it's like you can read the comments. If you go on AO3 or if you just look at the internet, like women fans are so curious and thoughtful and they have all these stories and scenarios planned out in their mind. And their whole erotic experience is that of like curiosity and information and story and context in a way that I think is very different from my understanding of the male erotic experience.
There are two types of content on the platform, if I'm correct. So, some content is creator led, whereby anyone can essentially become a creator, develop content, even voice the story in some cases. And then there are Quinn original programs, which are a much smaller side of the business. I read about 1%. And these stories are essentially read aloud by celebrities that we would all know, right? And I want to start with the creator side of things. How do you crowdsource stories for your platform?
But right now, we're really focused on quality. And one thing we noticed about other places where erotic audio was available on the internet was that it was hard to sift through and figure out. And audio requires such an upfront investment. We find creators all over the internet. It's really fun. It's like Hunt, it's like America's Got Talent. But I would say they come from all over. Some are audiobook narrators, some are audio engineers, some are YouTube streamers, some are Twitch, streamers, some are TikTokers, and I would say the set of skills we look for is, like, some technical ability, so, like, they would know how to set up this mic, for example, and use sound effects and use Pro Tools, but also level of, like, emotional investment in the audio. I think being a truly talented actor, performer, connecting with the audience is really important. And yeah, like you mentioned, Quinn Originals are these, like, celebrity voiced audios. We've done 7, I think, so far, and they're a 3-episode series, and, yeah, they're more of like a marketing initiative in that they expose people to the genre for the first time. They come on Quinn and they're like, "Oh, wait, there are other creators?" And then they kinda trickle down into our world of creators on Quinn.
Yeah, going back to the sort of creators that you source, I think obviously social listening must play a huge part, right? You were talking about different corners of the web, YouTube, etc. Like romance talk, romance book talk is huge. Fan fiction talk, I guess you could call it. So I'm assuming you spend time in these spaces and kind of hunt for potential creators that could be relevant storytellers on your platform.
Absolutely, yeah, and we also have, like, an inbound, application that people can submit on. So if anyone's listening and thinks that they might be the next star, please don't hesitate to submit an application.
Yeah, and the creator economy is set to be worth something like $500 billion by 2027, according to Goldman Sachs. Do you think that there's a big chunk of that pie that could be attributed to spicy content creators, where whether that's something like just visual content creators on OnlyFans or perhaps audio creators on Quinn and other platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I just feel like there's so much untapped potential in the kind of universe of content creators. So many male creators have these diehard loyal female fan bases, like you're saying, like on book talk or romance talk or whatever. And there's no real way for them to monetize them, right? And so Quinn's idea is, what if you could tell these diehard fans spicy stories and monetize them that way? And we think that it definitely has the potential to be on the scale of something like OnlyFans, which is just a juggernaut in term and has totally just, like, flipped the erotic content space on its head.
From an original programming POV, right? You talked about how it's a small, aspect of your business. It's more of a marketing play at the moment. How do you determine what celebrities would be a good fit for reading erotic content on your platform?
Well, like you said about social listening, we ask our users who they wanna hear, because we don't know everyone, and we've definitely, like, gotten some amazing recommendations from our audience, and on our team, there's also people who are different, like, parts of different fandoms, and that's really helpful. But I would say generally they should have had a role that was kind of like a thirst role that captured the imaginations of women.
Who are some of the celebrities that you've worked with already?
I would say Andrew Scott is the one that people, often bring up and are super excited about. He was the hot priest in Fleabag. He's just a really talented, really, really, truly talented actor, and so that was just really exciting to work with someone of that caliber in this space, and he brought, like, a just an amazing performance.
So, how do you ensure your stories will resonate with your audiences? You mentioned that you pull them to ask who they want to hear from a celebrity POV, but when you get a pitch or when you're, talking about potential story ideas with your creators, how do you determine if the story is the right fit for what women want to hear right now?
Women are not a monolith, and we try to have a lot of diversity in our content, like sweet boyfriend audios, and then also rough, kind of more like Christian Grey, Dom style audios, and everything in between, fantasy, historical, whatever, what have you. But I think it's very data informed. We look at the top categories, we look at the top themes on Quinn, what people are loving, and that really kind of informs the direction of our Quinn originals, or if we give any feedback to creators on their stories.
How do you ensure inclusion? You talked a little bit about this earlier. How do you ensure that the stories meet, the spectrum of females?
Yeah, I think no one story will check everyone's boxes, but we try to have a library that reflects our diverse user base. And I think one thing that's been interesting is how much specificity do people want? For example, do they want to know what the creator looks like? Do they want the creator to describe what they look like? Or does that bring them out of the experience? People have differing answers on that. So there's like varying levels of fantasy that need to be accounted for. And I think also a really important thing to us is having a diverse set of voices. So people who come from all sorts of different backgrounds and can offer stories that are authentic to them, like in terms of creators, because there's just a limit to how much we can kind of prescribe or dictate, and we just wanna kind of hear from different types of people.
How would you say you're about a couple years in now since launching. How would you say it's going? Like, is the app where you envisioned it would be? Has your kind of business transformed at all? Has the interest in audio erotica exploded?
So when I first started Quinn, it was very hard to get traction. And we had a bunch of different like beta sites and just flop after flop. And when we launched our app was really when things started to turn around. And we started to find kind of our users and we were better at listening to them. And I would say we like, the elusive product market fit kind of happened maybe 2 or 3 years ago and then was sort of ignited by Quinn Originals. And now we have millions of user sessions a month and hundreds of thousands of subscribers. And we're really just trying to take Quinn that next step really into the mainstream. How can this be a company that is really like the OnlyFans for women, but with a more mainstream varnish that, a type of company that could have a Super Bowl commercial or just really kind of normalizing sex and pleasure as a healthy and happy part of life.
What about payment for both creators and for celebrities? How does that work? On TikTok, a mid-tier creator might require, $10,000 per post or something, let's say. But do you have some creators that have larger followings that generate, more revenue than others and expect to be paid more? How does that work?
Yeah, so currently we basically have a type of revenue share that's kind of based on performance and negotiated kind of per creator because you can imagine if you're a TikTok creator who's bringing like millions of followers onto Quinn, you're going to want more money, a higher rate from the beginning versus like an anonymous creator who's going to build their audience on Quinn. And I would say, like, going forward, we are working on how can we scale this compensation structure for creators such that we could have thousands of creators who can all make a ton of money on Quinn. So that's kind of a focus for us. Oh, for Quinn Originals, that's been kind of interesting. We've had some celebrities that we've reached out to say, I really want an equity grant in Quinn so I can feel like every time I'm promoting you guys, I get to partake in the upside. So that's definitely something we do there. And I think, yeah, it's been really fun to work with creators of all kinds.
A little bit of a different question here. So, in the trend world, we've been talking about the importance of multisensory for a long time now. I'm very curious. Would you ever bring your audio stories to life in a different way, perhaps visually or even like tactilely, going down like the sex toy route, for example?
I don't think we would ever do like visual pornography, for example, but I think there's a lot of like connection between cinematic, like sort of romance or erotic movies, like in the mainstream. Like we did a partnership with A24 around Baby Girl, and since then we've done, or we're working on other similar partnerships. And I think it could also work in the reverse, where it's like, okay, do we want to work with a production company to bring one of the Quinn originals to the screen? Like that could be really interesting. So I'm definitely not opposed to that.
This is a good segue, but where can and do brands fit in here? So there's been a number of brands that have really attempted to integrate into spaces like Pornhub or OnlyFans throughout the years with, campaigns or just, other types of integrations and activations. Is there such a thing as sponsored content in the audio erotica space?
I don't know. I don't think there are advertising options on OnlyFans, but on Pornhub, like the ad cost is very cheap because there's like not a lot of companies that want to advertise on Pornhub. And I think there have been some companies who've really taken advantage of that. I remember like some iconic food delivery campaign that they did on Pornhub. There was like hungry after that or something, you know what I mean? Like really cheeky. It's interesting to see that. I think for Quinn, we've done partnerships with Bumble and like I mentioned A24 and we did one with Hims and Hers and I think like what's really interesting to us is these entertainment type partnerships. Like if you're a studio who's promoting a film that is a romance film or just something kind of adjacent to Quinn, could we create content for you? Could we brand content for you in the app and put like audio bumpers, in that's like, oh, did you like that audio? Did you like that historical audio that you just listened to? You can now see this historical movie in theaters starting this week. I don't know, something like that. But I think kind of a nice premium sponsorship around content releases is something we're really, interested in.
Yeah. So I had forecasted the rise of like digital sexuality almost like, I don't know, 8 years ago now. And at first it was very much like really subtle ways, think like dating apps, for example. And then eventually it evolved into more sort of grander things like AI companionship. in a way, Quinn sits somewhere in the middle there. Are you using AI at all throughout your business? And do you think that, you are going to become a sort of like, you're going to be tapping into this digisexuality space in the future?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I saw some quote from Mark Zuckerberg that was like, human beings have 3 friends and they have appetite for 11 friends and AI will fill that gap kind of thing. And I think that for me, it's like I feel like erotic content actually will be one of the last places that AI subsumes like the human element. Who knows? Could be totally wrong.
Yeah, I think the sort of uncanny valley of it all is very apparent in visuals, right? Like you can kind of tell when things aren't quite right when you're scrolling Instagram and you're like, I don't think that that person is real. But I think it becomes a little more dangerous actually in the audio space because there's no way of actually telling if something was created with AI. There's not very like no light bulb moments might go off. I think maybe what's interesting is that your platform is really like crowdsourced in a way. You ask your community what they want and you kind of deliver it to them in that way. And so AI would kind of remove some of that. But do you think that there is a future in which AI is powering the porn industry or the erotica industry?
I don't think in the next 2 to 3 years we're gonna have an AI that can make Quinn at the Quinn level of, like, top creators, audio erotica. There's so much breadth and movement and, Foley and sound design that it's pretty hard to imagine that. It's different from, like we discussed, an audiobook, which I do think people have started to, like, really effectively kind of automate, which is scary for other reasons, but it raises some existential questions in the porn industry, like, with OnlyFans, for example, you know, it really relies on this illusion that the performer is DMing you, right? A lot of the revenue comes from the DM section, and if you're using an AI bot there or you have, Gary kind of doing your DMs, like, it ruins it. So, I personally don't see that as, like, a viable option in the erotic content space, but again, I couldn't have predicted the way ChatGPT has taken over the world, so I'm kind of just hanging on for dear life and figuring it out with everyone else too.
What about like voice dubbing for celebrity actors? Like, obviously, that technology is maturing quite a bit. And we're starting to see some celebrities, even some creators, kind of like license their likeness almost. So instead of having to actually work with the platform, they could essentially send their voice AI. I don't know what the right term is, but send their voice over and allow them to essentially read it without having to physically be there or to be involved in the process. Is that a future that you can see? Or would you prefer to kind of always keep it very human centric on Quinn?
I would definitely prefer to keep it human-centric, in short, but I also think there's, like, a world not necessarily with that feature, but, like, where AI, like, is used in creator tooling and supports creators and is very, like, within their boundaries and they're consenting to it, and I mean, this already exists on a lot of platforms, like, just, like, AI assisted content generation, and I'm sure, like, people who do ADR for, like, TV shows and movies are already using some of this technology, so to the extent it's, like, very within the hands of the creator and the person whose voice it is, that's totally, like, seems kosher to me.
Okay. And like always, I ask all of my guests who is somebody that you admire, who's creating a new version of tomorrow that you find really inspiring. So I'm curious who your pick is.
So I'm just gonna say this because this person came up on my Instagram today. Sarah Blakely, the founder and CEO of or formerly CEO, I think the founder of Spanx. I what I love about her is I find her to be so warm and fun and funny, and she totally turns the trope of, like, the CEO on its head, and I think that is so important for our culture to see female leaders that are feminine and fun and, like, just doing it their way, and I think she's just a phenomenal example. If there are any, like, female business, leaders listening or just, female people, listening, she's such a great example of, like, the idea that there's no wrong way to be a CEO or to be a founder or to be a leader, and the only wrong way would be to do it inauthentically, like, everyone just has their own strengths and their own way to do things, and I find her so inspiring in that way, that she's just done it her way. And you'll get what I mean if you see her social content. So I would say in general, I'm very inspired by leaders who buck like traditional stereotypes around what like CEOs look like.
Thank you to my guest, Caroline Spiegel, founder of the audio erotica platform Quinn. If you're a WGSN subscriber, look out for more trends at WGSN.com. If you're not a subscriber, please come and discover our services. We'll be back with our next episode soon. In the meantime, you can catch the CEO of WGSN, Carla Buzashi, next week on our other podcast, Lives of Tomorrow. I'm your host, Cassandra Napoli. Be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast, and see you next time.